Yo, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Dee Guwap. Next up, we have Sensui, the most broken shonen villain by the simple. Let's get into it.
Yoshihiro Togashi has written some of the best villains in all of manga. In Hunter
I don't disagree with that. What I want to say before is the simple does great work. Go subscribe to him. I reacted to his Tagoro video, and it was well done. I'm gonna put the link right there. Go check that out. Check that out and come back to this one. But yeah, go subscribe to the Goro. Oh, also, uh, I've lost my train of thought.
Hunter, you have characters like Hisoka, Chrollo, and Meruem that are
Mhm.
widely recognized as great villains. But in his previous work, Yu Yu Hakusho, Toguro and Sensui are also similarly revered.
I don't disagree. I think Tagashi took everything he learned from Yu Yu Hakusho and applied it to Hunter x Hunter. Like even the stuff he didn't know in the beginning. Like I think Hunter x Hunter might be a more souped up Yu Yu Hakusho, if that makes sense. Um, but I personally think Yu Yu Hakusho is still better.
Already made a video going in depth on why I think Toguro is the greatest shonen villain. But today I want to talk about Sensui and why I think he's an extremely underrated villain. After I dissected the Dark Tournament arc, I came to the conclusion that Toguro was the best Yu Yu Hakusho villain by far. But now that I also dissected the Chapter Black arc, it becomes really hard to write off Sensui's character as a measly runner-up.
Hmm.
What I think makes Sensui so underrated is that his character does not try to compete with the previous villain Toguro, but he enhances and builds off the ideas that Toguro's character presents to deepen the theme.
That's also what's huge. Like most characters come, so like Dragon Ball Z, it's all about their power levels. Like let's be for real, their motives kind of got weak after Vegeta. Like they just wanted to be strong. So Frieza being the strongest in the galaxy is immediately retconned when there's King Cold, when there's the androids and there's Cell. Like the motives are just gone, if that makes sense. And so uh since we didn't do this, he didn't just, oh, I'm infinitely stronger than Tagore. No, he tested their beliefs, he tested the philosophies outlined in the show beforehand, and he just made you question. Like he brought a different question to shit. I can't think of the guy that smoked that was with Tagore right now, but to his plan, to his
Of the
motives.
story. Unlike Toguro, who was a demon and whose character centered around his decision to discard his humanity to become one, Sensui is a human through and through, and his character explores what being a human or a demon actually means, exploring the human condition and psychology. But before we can analyze the mind of Sensui, we have to understand how he fits into the grander narrative of Yu Yu Hakusho. Coming off the end of the Dark Tournament arc, Toguro was firmly solidified as a legendary villain, both in power and writing. So for Togashi, trying to one-up him would have been a futile endeavor. But like I
Mhm.
said, Togashi chose to build off the ideas he presented in the previous arcs, not just with the characters, but also by using one of the dangling plot lines of the previous arcs as the main plot for the Chapter Black arc and Sensui's entire goal. Before the final round of the Dark Tournament, Sakio had planned on opening a portal to the Demon Plane,
Sakio. No, that's Smokey's name.
which would allow powerful demons to pass through. Toguro was on board with this plan, since after defeating Yusuke, he would have no more powerful opponents to fight in the human world. Toguro was going to continue down this path of dark emptiness, but deep down he wanted Yusuke to win, to prove that the path that Genkai had taken and that Yusuke had followed had been the correct path. Yusuke did win in the end, and this dark empty path, along with Sakio's ambitions, were buried. But it turns out that the elder Toguro had survived and had been sending out his dark aura like a signal to find someone just as twisted as he was, which is how he was found by Sensui, bridging these
Mhm.
two arcs together. Shinobu Sensui was born with immense spiritual power and perception, which caused him to get in constant conflicts with demons and apparitions, and
Bro, he was like 4, 3 there, and he was just like, bro, they was just afraid of that nigga, bro.
eventually be recruited by Koenma to become a spirit detective. His constant battle with demons became kind of a moral crusade to him, and it caused him to develop a much more black and white ideology than Yusuke ever did, where he believed that demon kind is evil and humankind is good. This strictly
Bro, that's my shot. Like, bro, that right there of him holding out the hand, bro, that right there is the
black and
shot of
white
Sensui.
worldview is analogous to the two paths that I talked about in my previous To-Girl video, working as a thematic continuation of the previous arc. To-Girl's fall from grace was him going from a good human to an evil demon, but this comes with the presupposition that demons are evil in the first place.
I think it's kind of wrong there because he didn't turn into an evil demon. Like, that wasn't the exact fall. When he went into the woods and came back, that's when he fell. If he didn't get turned into a demon, he was going to become an evil human, if that makes sense.
Which isn't wrong. Demons by definition are malevolent entities, which is why demon isn't a 100% accurate translation. In the original Japanese, yokai, meaning strange apparitions, is used instead, which has a much more morally neutral and vague connotation. So the two paths shown in the last arc, Genkai's good human path and To-Girl's evil demon path, doesn't make the distinction between humanity and morality. This distinction is developed through the Chapter Black arc and is crucial to understanding Sensui, because this is the distinction that he fails to make as well. To Sensui, there was no difference between what we call yokai and demons. All yokai were evil in his view, and this idea dangerously cemented itself into Sensui's mind at a young age.
What I also love about Sensui is I feel like this is a cautionary. I don't feel like it's a cautionary tale. I feel like everybody in the world should have to see this and gather their own train of thoughts from it. When you're so hell bent on one idea, one belief, having that shatter, like having that be disproven to you, shatters your world and you fall into madness. Like
This all changed when Sensui met Itsuki, who was the first yokai that he could relate to, and made him realize that yokai were much more human-like than he realized. This fractured Sensui's mind and beliefs. However, Sensui still believed that humans were intrinsically good, or at least not as capable as evil as yokai are. Until during one of his missions, he witnessed the Black Book Club torturing the yokai that they had summoned, purely for their own amusement and pleasure. This idea of humans being capable of as much evil as yokai did not exactly sneak up on us.
bro. And it's crazy because I never put two and two together. The Black Book Club was the organization that Sakya was a part of. Bro, them niggas was just like that club is just intrinsically evil, bro.
Like I said in my previous dissection video of the Spirit Detective saga, most of the early arcs in the series have very black and white conflicts. Yusuke is firmly positioned as the good and righteous spirit detective, and the yokai he faced as evil villains. But in the Yukina rescue arc, and with the introduction of To-Girl, Sakyo, and the Black Book Club, this dichotomy was quickly put into question. It lingered in the background of the Dark Tournament arc, with Sakyo being just as evil as To-Girl, yet merely human. But now it's being fully addressed through Sensui. And
Yeah, like Sakyo came off cooler and not as bad because he didn't have the power to enact his plans. The girl was the muscle, but hell, his plans was worse than what his actual plan and the girl's plans. He was the worst of the two. The girl planned to die. Sakyo wanted to open up that
now
hole.
that Sensui had witnessed both the humanity of demons and the monstrosity of humans, his deeply held beliefs about the world had been thoroughly shattered, and his psyche was shattered along with it. Sensui had then stolen the Chapter Black tape from the Spirit World's record department that archived thousands of hours of humanity's worst acts and atrocities. This led Sensui even further down the dark path. Unlike To-Girl, who went down the dark and empty path but deep down knew it was wrong, Sensui, now disillusioned with this duality, commits to this dark and empty path.
And also, I think he doesn't believe it's wrong now. Like Tagoro knew what right and wrong was. We have Sensui struggling. I think even to the end, he struggles on what technically is right and what's wrong. And I never thought about this either. Bro, he probably watched that damn tape multiple times, hours on end. And that just more secured his ideology.
The fact that the lesson that Yusuke learned in the previous arc was to reject To-Girl's demon path and embrace Genkai's human path, yet the villain of this arc is a former spirit detective who had defected from the human path and deconstructs this entire dichotomy, is just a perfect hero and villain parallel, and it builds off the previous villain's parallels of the protagonist to create a brand new philosophical conflict. I know I'm sounding vague here when I say the human path and the dark path but that's because these terms are vague in the Dark Tournament arc. But in the
Mhm.
Chapter Black arc, and through Sensui's character, Togashi explores these concepts on a deeper level. I'm afraid of simplifying things too much by just saying good or evil, because these two paths that the story explores attempt to explore something deeper than even that. But for the sake of clarity, I'll call the path that Koenma sees as worthy of being a spirit detective. Friendship, the human spirit that values emotions, honesty, and courage, the philosophy of Genkai that she passes on to Yusuke and that Toguro rejects. That
He's gonna call it the human path. I think there might be a different term for that, but his is the best one right now. But yeah, that's what they believed is in the best interest of mankind.
is
Genkai
what
and
I'll call the
Koenma.
human path. And the path that Toguro takes, of darkness and emptiness that Sensui embraces, that is the path of the void. I think the void is a good analogy because it's often used to represent emptiness or nihilism, and that seems to be what Sensui fell into, which results in his plan to destroy the human world by opening a portal to the demon plane that allows powerful demons to wreak havoc on Earth. Now the thing is, clearly this path violates the deeply held, self-righteous identity of Shinobu Sensui. So in order to preserve this, Sensui's mind shatters and creates multiple personalities for every situation that contradicts Shinobu's conscience. Shonen tells the most
Mhm.
generic writing advice you can get, but that's because it explains the power of stories. For example, if you wanted to learn human psychology, you can read a scientific journal that'll tell you all the information available, but to personally understand it, you would need to either experience it yourself or someone who's experienced it can relay the experience to you through a story.
I also don't 100% agree with that. I 90% agree. There's one other option, and most of mankind is not capable of this. Having such deep empathy that you're able to understand somebody's pain and somebody's like experiences through words. This is not me being holier than thou. I have that. I just relate well, and people have spoken to me because of that. Hell, that's probably why y'all like listening to me. Um, so yeah, I think there's three options to that if I'm being honest. But he hit the nail on the head
Now, a
too.
fictionalized story has the con that it can't be 100% realistic because it isn't real. But the pro is that it allows you to exaggerate and craft a story that stresses its purpose way more efficiently than reality can. And a good example of this is with human psychology. Multiple personality disorder, now referred to as dissociative personality disorder, is actually a pretty common trope in all sorts of media, to the point where some psychologists doubt the legitimacy of the diagnosis. Well, personally, I don't see it as a problem to showcase this disorder in fiction, since from my research, Togashi portrays it pretty accurately. I
And bro, he smacked that. Like he's gonna go over. Shit, let's
assume he read about it somewhere himself and decided to include it in his story, which is honestly a better alternative than taking your made up characters than LARPing on TikToks for views. The part of DID that is most accurately written is the fact that it's a reaction from trauma that overloads a relatively vulnerable or juvenile mind and dissociates that trauma into different identities in order to cope. This fits Shinobu perfectly because he had built up his identity of the just warrior against demons from a very young age and held onto that belief after becoming a spirit detective. Shinobu's strong sense of justice remains, even as Sensui grows into an adult. He's even able to wield the extremely rare Holy Chi, but now he is noticeably more deranged, and his mission has swapped completely from serving humans to serving demons. Shinobu, as the original, becomes the core of all the personalities, and he develops 6 others to help him complete other parts of the plan and deal with other emotions. Unfortunately,
That motherfucker was the original seven paths. Bro, I thought there was only six. There's six. This thing is the original seven paths of pain
we
over
only get
there.
to see 3 of Shinobu's personalities in the story, and the other 4 are only explained to us. First up we have Naru, the more emotional and feminine personality that handles the expressing of emotions. Naru is favored by Itsuki, only second to Shinobu himself, and seems to be the only one that would be reciprocal toward him. Then there's the more cynical George, who's the
Bro, I like how the maniac just got the normal English name. George.
master of all of Sensui's weapons, which is pretty weird since Kazuya is the only one we see who can wield a weapon. Then there's the environmentalist Hitoshi, who cares about animals and plants, and he's likely the personality that advocates for yokais above humans, for the reason that I'll expand upon at the very end. Makoto handles Sensui's domestic life, like cooking and shopping, which is pretty funny to imagine.
Bro, it's crazy that I understand that on a whole level. Just doing domestic things, bro. It's just like it's a task
And
upon
then there's
itself.
Kazuya, the closer, who's a killing specialist who's the most foul-mouthed and sadistic out of all of them. It wouldn't bat an eye while killing a puppy or a small child. He is the first alter we see Sensui switch into, and his necessity is quite clear in the plan of wiping out humanity. The core Shinobu could never kill a human, so it's quite likely that this personality was developed first, and his first act was to massacre the Black Book Club. And finally, Minoru, who is the orator, schemer, and manipulator, more like a Sakyo than a Toguro. He is the original Sensui that we had witnessed through the majority of the first part of the story, so he's the one we're going to cover in depth, since most of Sensui's actions were performed by this one.
Y'all just don't
Sensui
understand. I fucking watched this series like 4 or 5 times up until this point and didn't realize that it wasn't the original guy this whole time. Like it was just an alter ego. Like it was like, bro, that's crazy. Because the original guy is the most dangerous. Sensui's the most dangerous, but Minoru was the one that we've most
could
accustomed
not
to.
complete his plan of opening the portal to the demon plane alone, so he puts together a team of 7 to help him. The Sensui 7
Mhm.
consists of himself, mostly the Minoru personality, as the mastermind, along with his demon partner Itsuki, the gatekeeper whose job it is to open the demon portal. After that, he employs 5 human psychics who have awakened psychic territories as a result of the demon portal being opened in their city, and brainwashes them and converts them using the chapter Black. There's also a disturbing pattern that most of his targets have pre-existing issues and a pessimistic view on life. The Seaman, Mitarai, for example, is a teenager who has experienced bullying in the past, and that causes him to have a slightly pessimistic attitude on human nature. But Sensui takes this slight pessimism in Mitarai's mind and morphs it using the chapter Black to convince him that humanity is inherently evil and does not deserve to live. The doctor, Minoru Kamiya, seemed to be a bit psychopathic before he met Sensui, but after witnessing the chapter Black, he becomes completely unhinged and unmistakably insane, emboldened by Sensui to become a murderer. The game master Amanuma is a kid who doesn't have the greatest relationship with his parents and seems to busy himself with video games as a coping mechanism. This time, Sensui doesn't use the chapter Black, but instead indulges him by convincing him that nothing else matters and to help him destroy everything.
With the kid, this is the only time that he actually kind of forced them to do something. Everybody else, I don't call manipulation like force. Like people look at manipulation as the worst thing in the world. No, they still have free will to do whatever they wanted. He showed them the chapter Black tape, but they made their own decisions. Now, would he have probably killed them if they turned them down? Maybe. But he didn't force anybody to help. So all of them are just as criminal as he
Else in
is.
the world. Manipulation is one of the most powerful tools in the arsenal of a villain because it displays both intelligence and malice simultaneously. And what's so great about
Yeah.
Sensui as a villain is that he can find that small bit of pessimism in an average person like even you or I and cultivate that into his dark and destructive ideology. And Sensui's chapter Black is such an interesting tool for a villain because much like Sauron's One Ring, it allows the audience to imagine what they would do if they encountered this cursed artifact and if it would be able to bring them to the dark side. I think the manipulation of a child is probably one of the most heinous but effective versions of this. Not only does Sensui manipulate his underlings to work for him and his dark agenda, but he also uses them to manipulate the protagonists as well. Sensui puts our protagonists in situations where in order to win, they must kill the human psychics, which will result in the deterioration of the protagonist's morals and ethics.
I wish the Daishi would have moved forward with death. Like I wish Genkai would have stayed dead. And I wish that damn doctor would have
His
died.
argument
Damn.
just a little bit stronger. The best example of this is the Game Master fight against Amanuma, which traps the protagonist in an infinite loop of a video game unless they defeat Amanuma, which will result in him dying. This on the surface is a stalling tactic, but it's also a way of Sensui showing that if Yusuke and Ko are willing to sacrifice a child for the greater good, then Sensui opening the portal and sacrificing humans to feed tons of yokai wouldn't be that much worse. And on top
And I wish the Game Master would have stayed dead too. Like it would have just impacted the story in such a powerful way. But they're cheating death like Dragon
On top of
Balls at
that,
this point.
Koima deciding to revive Amanuma would drain the Demon World portal, making it a triple effective tactic. Sensui is able to carry on Sakyo's and Togoro's dark plan alone because he has that twisted, cunning mind in addition to being extremely powerful. If I had to compare him to a Hunter x Hunter villain, it would definitely be Chrollo. They are both calm, charismatic, and intelligent leaders and have some Luciferian symbolism to them, and they both struggle with a sense of meaning and identity.
Plus, two of the strongest beings in their universe to enact these twisted plans. Because there's twisted people. Fucking, I could go outside and see somebody twisted. He ain't worth a damn. So it
Chrollo, whose
don't
last
matter.
name is Lucifer, is the leader of the 12 troop members, which is obviously a dark mirror of the 12 apostles, which is why he has the Antichrist symbolism. His sense of identity is tied with the existence of the troop, and I can go much deeper with Chrollo, but I would have to give him his own video. Sensui, on the other hand, has a nickname Dark Angel, which seems to be a Lucifer reference, and his story also mirrors the fall as well. Sensui being a former spirit detective.
Mhm. Never thought about that. He put me on game. His name was Dark Angel. Shit, this is the fall of Lucifer.
Fought for
Damn.
justice until he betrayed the spirit world and became a manipulative person bent on destroying humanity using legions of demons. Sensui's identity isn't dependent on other people, rather it's split into multiple personalities, which is the most distinct part of Sensui's character, but the core of his motivation and character still lies within his core personality, Shinobu. During Sensui and Yusuke's final fight, the Minoru personality explains that he didn't really care about the Demon World portal, and it was all a means to facilitate the confrontation between him and Yusuke. And I take this as Togashi expressing his frustrations in writing a shonen manga, as he constantly has to create reasons for his protagonist to fight the villain. Togashi had even stated that at this point in the story, he wanted to cancel the series, and he has been writing himself more into the villains than the protagonist.
And that makes sense because that statement didn't even make sense, if that makes sense. Damn, why did I say that so much? But like Tagoro's plan, he followed through with it because he heard about Yusuke beforehand, and the Dark Tournament was coming up, so he chose that. As he didn't make the tournament hoping to find somebody like Yusuke. um, it was a plus that he was trained by Genkai. Um, but Shinobu's plan was like planned way before Yusuke even became spirit detective. And even before, like, why would you care about the confrontation if it wasn't for Yusuke getting the power up, you know? Like, the Tagoro thing had to happen first for Yusuke to be strong enough to be worth a damn for this confrontation. So
We could
that
probably
didn't
assume
make
that the
sense.
other altars of Sensui were not invested in the portal themselves, and it was really Shinobu who was interested in creating this tunnel to the demon world. But why? The answer that Shinobu gives right before he dies was that he wanted to visit the demon world because he had always yearned to have a heritage from there. And this really didn't click with the rest of his character for me until I started writing this dissection. Why does Sensui want to be a yokai? Why does he want them to thrive over humans? If they are both capable of great evil, why does he have this preference toward the yokai? And I believe this is because yokai are not moral creatures, nor do they try or claim to be. Human beings will always claim to be just or moral, and use it to moralize their will to power. But the yokai have no such constructs of morality. They simply act in ways that benefit them. The pain that Sensui had felt of devoting his life to morality and justice, then learning that it was all merely a construct that shattered right before his eyes, completely broke him. And if he could have been born a yokai, this all could have been avoided in his eyes. This is best illustrated in his death scene, which, like
I have nothing to retort to that. I don't believe that's, but I think it's up for interpretation on why you think you wanted to be a demon. Like, I don't think there's really a black and white answer, but I respect that he came to this
Taguro's is
conclusion.
extremely thematically powerful. Taguro had been given some grace, but had chose to condemn himself to hell, which is a decision that shows that he believed that he was evil and deserved punishment. In contrast, Itsuki, who knows Sensui more intimately than anyone else, chose on his behalf that he would not go to the afterlife to be judged by spirit world, which is a rejection of the entire idea of good and evil and moral judgment in itself. So Itsuki takes Sensui to an alternate dimension, where they would drift in dark emptiness for eternity, in the void, which is literal this time. Sensui's character is packed deep with existential questions about nature, morality, and humanity. I think the deconstruction of the ideas of good and evil really stems from an author who was trapped in writing shonen manga. Now there is much more greatness in the Chapter Black arc than just Sensui. This video only covers the villain's character and argument, so if you want to understand the full story, be sure to watch the Chapter Black arc dissection and the Toguro dissection if you haven't already. And if you're interested in an in-depth dissection of Chrollo like I mentioned earlier, or Meruem, who I have much more to say about than in this video, along with an in-depth dissection of Yu Yu Hakusho, Hunter x Hunter, and many other manga and anime dissections in the future, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button so you can be recommended more videos like this in the future.
Shout out to the simple man. If y'all haven't, go follow him. A few thoughts. I think Izuka was a whole ass nigga for taking Sensui into the void. Like I get what he meant, but it was completely selfish. He did that so he could hold on to Sensui the whole time. Now, I like that. I like in stories where everybody don't have an omnipotent point of view, and I'm saying that as in Shinobu doesn't know what happens to Goro in the afterlife because he wasn't there. But like Shinobu did nothing wrong up until he started doing the Sensui 7, the Chapter Black arc stuff. And we know that because Koema lost touch of him and he just thought he was just laying low. Like if he was causing mayhem and if bodies were starting to pile up, Koema would have had to go looking for him. Like, this stuff would have added up. So he did nothing for most of the years he was away, just trained. So he would have made it into heaven. Like, boom, boom, based off his resume. If Toguro was able to get a less harsh punishment, he wasn't going to go to hell. But Izuka did that little whole ass shit. Um, it's the dissection of the mind where I think he's better than Toguro and just his whole way of going about stuff. Because, like, truthfully, bro, he could have stepped to everybody, killed everybody, and held Kuwabara as prisoner. But he didn't. Like, we didn't even see him fight for the longest. It looked like he was just running. Bro, he just wanted to he wanted to prove how much smarter he was than all of them put together. And then when it came to the battle, that's when we could fade it out. But tell me how y'all like the video down below. Tell me, what do y'all think Shinobu Sensui wanted to become a yokai? I would like to hear y'all's opinions down below. Be sure to like that button and subscribe so you don't miss more content like this. And I will catch y'all next time.